Well, today is Sunday, April 13th, and we managed to make our way down to the LX factory, which is in an old industrial area, very similar to in Kaohsiung that we go to. And we're right close now to the April 25th bridge. So there's all sorts of restaurants, artwork, stores, outdoor shops, that sort of thing. And there's a vine with flowers growing on it here. And there's all sorts of bars, and this is a little pop-up store here. We bought a bowl for China's daughter. And there's a hostel up there. I imagine it's popular with the younger crowd. You're right where all the action is. And it's a very decorative wall. And a big lineup for the bathrooms. And there's a back area which we'll go into later, but this is kind of the main entrance right here. There's a rooftop bar if you want to climb all those stairs, or you can stay on the ground level. And they have a lot of art with descriptions on the outside of the buildings, which are quite neat. And there's pretty well everything along this street here. There's a few shops, but it's pretty much bars. Portuguese food. And some more art. We're just cutting through. There's stuff inside, and then just the stuff that's outside. And there's a woman back here who's a really good singer. She was doing Harry Styles' Watermelon Sugar High a little while ago. There's a railway, the red thing under the bridge is a railway line.
Each classic
Well, we got back from the LX factory, so we came back on the bus, and this is just close to our hotel. And that big statue down there in the middle is the Marquis was responsible for overseeing the rebuilding of Lisbon after the 1755 earthquake. So that's a giant roundabout down there. And then this is a big wide boulevard, and they've got this maze that comes all the way up through. And you can see the estuary of the Tiger River way up there in the distance.
Let's see if we can do a selfie from here.
Yeah, and there is a nice pond over here. Not really a fountain, I guess, or maybe they just don't have the fountain turned on. That water looks like it'd be fun for a dip. And there's lots of people that are just sunbathing because it's right in the middle of the city, so it's a nice open green space. And way off in the distance is the St. George Castle. There's also a music concert going on over there. And there's a dog that's jumping over the hedges down there too. There he goes. The dog is having a good time. Oh yeah, come on, jump. I don't think he's gonna jump for me. Okay. Come on, sing. Well, we hiked down from the mountain, and we're now at the big roundabout. We're right in the middle of it. And this is the Marquis de Pombal. And I'll show you a better view of him later, but there's a big lion at the top, which is a symbol of power. As I said, he oversaw the reconstruction of Lisbon. So it's a very impressive statue. And our hotel is just over in behind that red building there. And you can see there's a Portuguese caravel, which is the ships they used to sail in the 1500s. And you can see the Marquis is way up there. There's also some horses and things over here. And there's a lot of stuff going on here, but yeah, he's quite the hero, this guy. Well, today is April 14th, and we've made our way outside west of town, past the LX factory to the Maritime Museum. And we're just about done, and here's a big display area. But it goes through the history of the Portuguese explorers that settled Africa and India and places like that. It was very, very interesting. And now we're just at the back of the finish of the museum, and it's got all these beautiful boats. Some of these are owned by the princes and kings of Portugal. I can see that's pretty fancy there. And it also went through the fishing boats and history of fishing, including they talked about Newfoundland and Greenland and places like that. Fishing for cod. And here's a massive one here. The oars on that one. It's the Royal Barge. And this is a pretty neat one. It's a type of fishing boat just used by the locals in Portugal to fish. It's nicely colored. It's got the high boat, I guess, for the waves, the bow. Here's another super cool one. It was built, as you can see, to gather seaweed in the estuary. So a lot of very big sea culture in Portugal, of course, being right on the coast, and all different boats for different functions. So we came up into the observation deck, so you can see inside the boats a little better. So a lot of these are like fishing boats and just passenger boats and that sort of thing. But the ones over there with the canopies are all royal yachts, basically. And dating back to the 1700s, the royal family would go in these boats, and they would have oarsmen that would, take them around. This particular one, I think, here is around 1760. But yeah, all these ones with the canopies were royal. And of course, this is the mother of all ones here with all the oars. At the start of the museum, they have all the Portuguese explorers from the 13 and 1400s. Vasco da Gama. This is Henry the Explorer. And he was one of the main guys who developed a lot of the naval architecture. And these guys were all explorers that went around Africa from Portugal, and they were in the service of Henry the Explorer. And this is a map of the Portuguese expeditions and possessions around the world, because they had possessions in China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, India, all over the place. And they kept them for like 400 years. There are a ton of old cannon and guns and things used to as part of their conquest. They have a lot of oil paintings, and then of course a lot of scale models of ships that were used initially, like back 1300s and whatnot, and then they go through how they evolved into the caravels and subsequent models. And there's some Portuguese armor and chainmail from the 1500s. Here's one of their ships from the 1500s. It's a map of the east of Africa, Saudi Arabia, and India, a Portuguese settlement. It's a statue of Vasco da Gama. And these are actual cannons that were on the Portuguese warships in the 1500s. These are the navigational instruments that they would use to measure latitude. And this is a globe made in Amsterdam of the world as about middle of the 1500s. By the 1500s, 1500, 1501, they had actually discovered Newfoundland and were fishing over in Newfoundland and Greenland. And of course they had Brazil down on the bottom left, as well as Africa, but they hadn't yet made their way to India. These are relics from a shipwreck that was wrecked just actually in the Tigris River, just downstream from here. They're all dating from the 1500s. Dishes, and there's also some oriental pots and whatnot that came from China. We're inside an old monastery. The outside is quite beautiful. There's some cannon and that's actually a trunk that a captain would have had all this stuff in. Don't know how they would have lifted it. A bunch of people, I guess. And now we're up into the 1700s, and these are frigates. So they've really evolved from the 1500s at this point. Of course, they're going across the Atlantic, yada, yada, yada. It had been for a couple hundred years, and over to India and China. And Portugal actually had the military presence to protect all of these trade routes from others. Here's a giant cannon that they used. So yeah, they just kept evolving, and basically it was about 400 years that the Portuguese were in Africa and other places and had colonies there. And it wasn't until the 1900s, mid-1900s, that they actually relinquished a lot of those. Portuguese soldiers in the 1700s. Some weaponry. And I won't go in this section, but it goes all through the Second World War, First World War, right up to modern day, submarines, etc. And here they just have different boats that were used on the various rivers around Portugal for collecting things and transporting people. And here's a view of the monastery from the side entrance. That's where we go into the museum. It goes all the way down here. That's the older part. And then you go through this hallway, and then it turns into a more modern building over here. It's well worth the money. This is probably one of the best museums I've seen in a while. For €8 to get in and $4 for seniors. So we finished up at the museum, and we've now walked a little bit further west down the estuary to the Tower of Belém, which is basically a battlement that was built to protect Lisbon back in the 1500s. It's quite a neat place. And now you can see over here a giant cruise ship coming in from the ocean, headed towards Lisbon. And it actually has a drawbridge. You can see the chains coming down there. There's the statue of Jesus, and there's the April 25th bridge, and Lisbon is back in that direction there. And that pretty much looks like the open ocean out there. I don't see any land on the far side. And now we're heading back towards where we get our bus, and this is just a little yacht club here. This green building over there. That looks like the Coast Guard, these boats right there. It's also an interesting statue over there honoring the explorers right to the right of us, in front of the bridge. And we're walking along, and we're a lot closer to the monument that is honoring all of the Portuguese explorers. Vasco da Gama had the lead there, who went and explored the world. And that big building sticking up through the lamppost there is the museum of the Marine Museum, which is in the monastery. It's not all the museum, but that's the main part of the monastery. So So the monument is honoring 500 years as of 1960 of Portuguese exploration. This is a model without the light fixtures, of course, of the Earth. So you've got the equator, you've got the two tropics, and you've got the two Arctic circles. And then the diagonal band is the path of the zodiac stars. And so this was a navigational device that they had. And it's quite windy and blustery today. And if you look up here, there's some Jesuits that the Portuguese brought along with them to basically quell the heathen. And they also perform medicinal purposes as well for the sailors. So yeah, it's quite a large, impressive monument right on the waterfront here. And as I said, Vasco, I think you can't see it from here because it's in the ocean, but Vasco da Gama right there on the side. And that's a better picture of the monastery there across, and that's where the Marine Museum is located. Well, today is our last day in Portugal, and we have a fish market. It's about 3 blocks away from our hotel, and they've got all sorts of stuff over here. And they have just like in Taiwan, in Donggang, they have restaurants that will allow you to pick your fish and then have it cooked up. Very nice. All sorts of different fish. They have a lot of salted cod. Salted cod there. Got tuna, octopus, all sorts of different fish. Right there, I think that's a skate. They also had a super nice wine store here with really beautiful wines. Then, of course, the sucking pig. Nice. Well, this afternoon we figured we'd just ride to the end of the Blue Line, which took us as far east as we've been. And it's basically where all the cruise ships come in. And then we started hiking back towards the center of town. We're getting rain on and off today. But so far it hasn't been anything that would really deter us. But it's just a new section of the downtown area. And now there's a photo museum here, which I did see on the map. Somebody's playing music. Oh, I see him over there. It's a nice narrow alley over there. Lots of cafes around. This, unfortunately, is very touristy. So they're all trying to nab you off the street to get you to come in. It's a really narrow street here. Beautiful though. And it's very charming. This part of the city must have survived the earthquake. This alley goes for quite a ways. It's really charming. You can see all the laundry hanging out on people's balconies. And we came to a little square here. And there's a nice big church. So we've moseyed along west along the river, and there's the Cod Museum here. And we've come to the main square in downtown, and they've got the massive arch that was built to commemorate the rebuilding of Lisboa after the earthquake in 1755. It's very impressive. And this is a statue of Josepho I, one of the kings in 1833. And there we see Josepho I on his horse. It's turned into a lovely day, but we keep getting rained on every once in a while. And they got these guys trying to hockey sunglasses all the time.